Hi, this is Rabbi Andy Koren from Temple Emmanuel in Greensboro, North Carolina. This is the second of this year's Pearls of Elul, and I'm standing in Temple's main sanctuary. Perhaps behind me you can see outside the beauty of Greensboro. Again, I want to just take this time to talk about examples of teshuvah, of let's call it change. Sometimes it's referred to as repentance, that come from the Hebrew Bible. And today I want to focus actually on the life and one of the stories of King David. You may know that King David is considered exemplary in the Jewish tradition, and therefore we often see him as a role model. And yet, if you read the stories of King David, you find out that there were significant things, significant errors that King David made along the way, even beyond just errors or mistakes. There was actually some bad stuff that he did. The most notable example of that is the story of how he takes Bathsheba, I guess, if that's how we say it in English, as a wife. He sees her, from the palace. He sees her. He's attracted to her. He finds out more information, I guess, intelligence on her, that she's married, that her husband, Uriah the Hittite, happens to be one of the soldiers, and he tells his commanders. He says, "Listen, in one of the battles," and I'm going to paraphrase here, "I want you to make sure that Uriah is exposed, and that he doesn't come back from the battlefield." And that's exactly what happens. Terrible. Just a terrible episode in the Jewish people's story. And I'm grateful, I think as we all are, that at least those stories don't get erased, that they get told on the pages of the Hebrew Bible. We also know that the prophet Nathan comes in and really calls King David on the carpet. He sets up a whole story, has King David respond to it, and ultimately he tells King David, "You're just like that person in the story, guilty." Now, what does King David do at that moment? He could have just laughed it off or, gotten rid of Nathan the prophet. But instead, we find out King David's response to that in Psalm 51. And that's the text that I want to send to you today, because it's an example of King David expressing his remorse. That's one of the steps of teshuvah, is recognizing that we did something wrong, and then going through the process of asking for forgiveness. Usually for the high holidays, we associate Psalm 27. That's the psalm that gets recited every day starting at the beginning of Elul, but I want us to focus on Psalm 51. Take a look at its words. And maybe they don't encapsulate the words that you would say, but you can hear in them King David's remorse. And then I just want us to think, sometimes we don't catch ourselves from the inside. Sometimes we need somebody else to come up to us and to remind us that what we did really is over the line. Maybe that's taken place in your own life. Maybe you want to talk a little bit more or reflect on that or even leave a comment. I hope that you will. But in these examples that we get from the Hebrew Bible, well, King David is exemplary and once again has put himself forward not just as an example of might or of royalty, but also as an example of tshuva, one that we can take with us as we go through the lead up to Rosh Hashanah this year. Take care.